lot of updates in the Nolan Wells case. First, brand new video reportedly shows what could be the last known image of him before he disappeared. That footage, obtained by TMZ, was recorded on Horn Island just hours before he vanished. We'll get into what this could mean for the investigation. And attorney Ben Crump, who is representing Nolan Wells' family, just made a major announcement that the initial preliminary findings of that independent autopsy will come out tomorrow. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Okay, so we're back
to a legal thriller where every piece of evidence, a phone, a boat, a body, raises more questions than it answers. Before we go deeper into what the documents actually show, make sure you're subscribed to Project Cold Case, because we don't just cover the story, we follow the evidence. Now, let's establish a baseline. The video is a critical piece of the puzzle, but it's also a perfect example of the gap between what is presented and what is actually known. It shows a man, whose face cannot be seen, wearing swim trunks that allegedly match Nolan's. This is not a positive identification. This is a visual suggestion presented as a major development. For a forensic investigator, this is not a piece of evidence. It's a lead that needs to be verified through metadata and GPS.
We last talked about this case, a lot has happened. For example, it was this week when Nolan was laid to rest by his family and friends. Reverend Al Sharpton officiated the service. Tyler Perry.
Well, the first thing that stands out to me is number one, it's a proof of life. And hey, if in fact that is him, then we know that he's alive at that date and that time, based on the metadata that they can pull off of that particular video. The proof of life argument is a powerful one. It places Nolan on a boat at 20:23 p.m. But it also introduces a complication that his family's attorney, Ben Crump, has already highlighted. Nolan was reportedly last seen on the island at 3:00 p.m. This creates a 37-minute window where Nolan goes from being on a boat to being on an island, a transition that makes no sense if the boat is his primary means of transportation.
Or a grand jury may be impaneled to hear this case. That is looming in the background. And we're still waiting on the autopsy results, right? The autopsy from the state examination and the autopsy from the independent autopsy that was ordered by Nolan Wells' family. So all of this is going on, and now I want to talk about what's happening with this video. Now, I said that the results haven't come out yet, but literally at the time of this recording, we just got word from Ben Crump.
Again, the video was recorded at 2:23 p.m., right? Ben Crump has said that no one was last seen on the island at 3 p.m. I haven't seen any contradicting account of that. It's 3 p.m. seems to be the time that we're hearing. But again, something could change. And we believe that boat left at around 4:31 p.m., so there's about this 2-hour window between this video and when the boat apparently left without Adam. This is where the official timeline begins to fracture. According to public statements, the boat left without Nolan at approximately 4:31 p.m. That means there is a 37-minute gap between the last scene, time of 3:00 p.m. and the boat's departure. What happened?
Director of Law Enforcement Relations and an investigative consultant with the Cold Case Foundation. Chris, always good to see you. Thanks for taking the time. I mean, this literally broke 5 minutes before we came on air. The fact that they are going to have what they're claiming here, if this is true, the results of this independent examination, they had claimed that Nolan's body was being sent off to Washington, D.C. A, they have these results. B, that they're going to announce them, and that this is going to be before the results of the state medical examination come out. What are your thoughts?
Well, at first,
the secondary thing that jumps out at me is you have all of these other boats around him at that point. So that means you can also get the GPS data in relationship to these other individuals around him from those other boats. So that now puts him in a particular location at a particular time. And it also tells us that if in fact he is that is him, and what's he getting on the back of that boat? This is the forensic anchor of the new video. It's not just about Nolan, it's about the world around him at that exact moment. The GPS data from surrounding vessels can be cross-referenced with phone records, eyewitness accounts, and the eventual location of Nolan's body.
And they're going to want to make sure that the state is aware of that. And then they're going to take those additional findings and push it against the investigation. I mean, that would be the logical steps here, right? And then, of course, from that point, there's going to be determination, well, what additional further testing should occur, what type of other evidence should be, looked into, and if in fact there is anomalies within the second autopsy, then of course they're going to want to, check those boxes. The state will, the state investigators, and make sure that they're lining up with the findings of both autopsies as a whole.
So, right, the state medical examination is the results are not coming out because they're waiting toxicology results. To me, it would seem that this independent autopsy has not done.
Well, at first just said, thank you so much for having me on your show. And then with the family, obviously, they want to make sure that the investigation is consistent with what the state investigation would discover, the state medical examiner's office. So, that would probably be one of the very first things that independent pathologists would want to say, right? The announcement that the independent autopsy's preliminary findings are imminent before the state's results are finalized is a significant procedural step. It suggests that the independent pathologists have found something they believe is urgent enough to share with the public. A full toxicology report can take weeks, but physical trauma, bruising, internal bleeding, defensive wounds, is visible immediately.
Almost immediately is the microscopic findings of, anything inside of the lungs as a whole. If there's water or fluid in the body.
But to make an announcement like this, does it seem to suggest to you that there could be evidence of foul play? That there was some markings or some trauma to Nolan Wells' body that would indicate this was not just a case of drowning, but something else? This is the central question that hangs over the entire investigation. If the independent autopsy found evidence of trauma, contusions consistent with a struggle, or injuries that occurred before the body entered the water, then the narrative shifts. It moves from a potential accident to a potential homicide. It would mean that Nolan didn't just fall in the water, he was put there, or he was forced in.
Other substances in his system, and that's where the toxicology reports are going to play a pivotal role in this from the very first autopsy, because that's going to be the most concentration within inside of this young man's blood.
Okay, so we'll see what results from this. Obviously, we're going to do our best to cover it here on Sidebar. I even told my team just now, let's plan for this. Let's see what happens.
Well, great points. The one thing, obviously, that can be determined almost immediately is the microscopic findings of anything inside of the lungs as a whole. If there's water or fluid in the body and or in the airway, you can also find that in a secondary autopsy because there would be microscopic evidence of that. So that number one tells us two things. The first thing it tells us if there is fluid is he was alive because obviously he's inhaling water at that point. If water is found in the lungs, it confirms he was alive when he entered the water.
Man is apparently wearing swim trunks that match the color of the swim trunks that Nolan was wearing in that July 4th photo that everybody has seen. It's a very famous photo, right? Infamous photo. Now, this is, again, the one with his friends on the boat. If this is Nolan, this video would seemingly be the last known image of him before he vanished and before his body washed up ashore just days later. When you see this video, what stands out to you when you watch it?
Well, the first thing that stands out to me is, number one, it's a proof of life. If, in fact, that is him, then we know that he's alive at that date and that time based on the metadata that they can pull off of that particular video. The secondary thing that jumps out at me is you have all of these other boats around him at that point. So that means you can also get the GPS data.
Fey applause and cheering, I want to put a reward up for $50,000 for anybody that could give the information that will lead to an arrest and a conviction in the case of what happened. He was not on that island by himself. Somebody saw something and knows something. The reward is a blunt instrument. It's meant to break the silence of those who may have information but are reluctant to come forward. But as any investigator will tell you, a reward can also be a magnet for misinformation, attracting people who want the money more than they want the truth.
Or water, or who knows what that substance is. But now an investigator can go back and say, okay, who owned this boat? what's in that cooler, and then you can actually trace that back to maybe other activities taking place earlier in the day, and then correlate that.
Yeah, there's always a plethora. There's always a potential for misinformation, false information in high-profile cases. And then there is the phone. Nolan's phone was left behind, reportedly on the boat. The family obtained the phone and found that data on the Life 360 app may have been deleted.
While I have you, can I ask you about the phone, Nolan's phone? I think that's an interesting piece of potential evidence here, that Nolan didn't have his phone with him. There's been back and forth about why that was, the idea.
Unfortunately, it could be a plus or a minus in a case like this because the type of information that you would want to come forward is probably going to be a very narrow scope in relationship to the if this is, foul play in any way, shape, or form. The individuals that are going to talk are probably not going to be motivated by the reward.
3 p.m. seems to be the time that we're hearing. But again, something could change. And we believe that boat left at around 4:31 p.m. So there's about this 2-hour window between this video and when the boat apparently left without him. One other thing, though, this video appears to show Nolan on a boat. Is it the same boat that his friends were on? The infamous July 4th photo shows him with his friends on a boat.
There was an allegation that data had been deleted from the phone, and now there's going to be a mutual inspection of the phone, according to Ben Crump, both by the family's experts and the state investigators. In a case where a person vanishes without their phone, the device is a goldmine. It contains location history, communications, and behavioral data. The fact that it's being inspected by both the family's experts and the state investigators suggests a deep concern that the phone's data may have been intentionally altered.
But then again, you have a shifting in behavior here. You have a young man who goes off potentially, it's reported with a young lady, and then just vanishes. Okay? And why would he leave his phone on the boat if, in fact, he's supposed to leave on that boat at some point? And now later on, it's discovered that he doesn't show up.
But he clears throat. Then again, you have a shifting in behavior here. You have a young man who goes off potentially, it's reported with a young lady, and then just vanishes. Okay. And why would he leave his phone on the boat if, in fact, he's supposed to leave on that boat at some point? And now later on, it's discovered that he doesn't show up and he's reported missing, but his phone is sitting there on the boat. The phone is a silent witness. It tells investigators where Nolan was, who he was talking to, and what he was doing before he disappeared. But if the data is deleted, the witness is silenced. The investigation must then rely on testimony, and testimony, in a case like this, is inherently unreliable.
Again, that's going to put everything back into the column of proof of life. We know that this young man is just enjoying a July 4th celebration and that there's nothing afoot here, right? Suspicious in nature. So it can go either way. If those dynamics changed, then what changed between that video and where his body was found? And this will lean the investigators into looking at that type of evidence.
Maybe because race is playing a role here. Okay. And they get into a fight and he falls into the water and he subsequently drowns. Maybe he's unconscious. And this is where the secondary autopsy will be very critical to see if there's any type of physical evidence in his body, i.e. defensive wounds at terre, head injuries, what we call subdural hematoma, bleeds inside of the body in of itself. And that in of itself will tell us if, in fact, there could have been an altercation of some sort. The possibility of a racial component adds a volatile layer to an already charged case. The investigation is being pursued against the backdrop of a community demanding answers, and the legal system is preparing for a potential grand jury.
Suspicious in nature.
And according to Ben Crump during a press conference last week, the DA apparently told him that once this investigation is complete, this case could be presented to a grand jury for potential criminal charges being filed. In what capacity, we wouldn't know, right? It could be, let's say, a potential homicide charge, could be something with respect to the investigation.
And according to Ben Crump during a press conference last week, the DA apparently told him that once this investigation's complete, this case could be presented to a grand jury for potential criminal charges being filed. In what capacity? We wouldn't know, right? It could be, let's say, a potential homicide charge. Could be something with respect to the investigation, someone not providing accurate information to law enforcement. Maybe it's tampering with evidence. The grand jury
not lining up. I had a case one time where a guy disappeared off of a boat, and we found some powder on the boat, and it was from a fire extinguisher. And we discovered later on in the investigation that the individual was telling us lies, and we were able to determine that in fact he had fired the fire extinguisher at the victim, and that there was a major altercation on this boat, and one person fell over, and one person came back. And is this that type of situation? Is there a fight that took place, or even if somebody's horsing around? As kids do, as young men do nowadays, and he got hurt and they left him. They left him in the water. Well, that would be obviously information you'd want to establish. And so there's a lot of information that's still needed. The investigation, in my opinion, would still be fluid. But yes, a grand jury could come back with accessory after the fact or other charges, manslaughter or something to that effect. We just don't know yet.
Let's see. Let's see what happens tomorrow with that independent autopsy results, the preliminary findings. Chris McDonough, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jesse. Appreciate you.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. You can also check us out on NBC's Peacock as well. If you want to follow me, X, Instagram, my News Nation show, Jesse Weber Live, Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern. See you next time, everybody.